Welcome to our Vault Shorts. These are shorter episodes highlighting programs and resources here in our Billings community. Today, we are talking with Marce B about planning and running events.
The following is a Big Sky Economic Development production.
It's Marce B.
And KaVo.
And this is The Vault at 201 North Broadway.
A business podcast.
Where we bring you entrepreneurs, small business owners, and community leaders of Montana.
To share their stories, expertise, industry insights, and strategies.
And we are sharing them all with you every single week.
You don't want to miss this.
Learn how to better start, manage, and grow your business.
And your leadership style.
Tangible takeaways to save you time and improve whatever it is that you're working on.
You're listening to The Vault.
Thank you to Big Sky Economic Development for supporting The Vault at 201 North Broadway. Big Sky Economic Development provides leadership and resources for business creation, expansion, retention, new business recruitment, community development, and workforce development. Learn more at bigsky.economicdevelopment.org.
Hey, Marce.
Hey.
How's it going?
Good. I'm excited for us to have this conversation today because I think between the two of us, we've planned a lot of events, trainings, conferences,
Absolutely.
etc.
You've done this for a very long time, not only here at Big Sky, but also you had your hand in a lot of events when you worked over at the Chamber.
I did,
which they host big, giant events. But throughout your career here at Big Sky, you've done a documentary premiere where you closed a whole street.
Yeah, that was fun.
Our yearly annual meeting, BSED's big 30th anniversary where we rented out the Metra, our big grand opening where we were shooting confetti guns on the street, and then you've helped out with MEDA, so Montana Economic Developers Association Spring Conference, which in my opinion was one of the best ones.
Thank you. Yeah, we won't say it officially, but it was fun. I was exhausted.
So someone was just talking to me the other day. They're like, you guys need to host MEDA again. That was the best ever. And they loved it. So I was like, okay,
that's so sweet of
I'll
them.
tell Marcel.
We'll get on the air in like 5 or 10 years.
So with planning these big events, what are some steps and tips that you have for our listeners that maybe are seasoned people in the event world, but also are individuals that are new in it? How do you keep it all organized?
Yeah. So one, I don't consider myself like an expert in this. I think there's like companies and people that do this like for a living and do it extremely, extremely well. And they're super pros at it. But I think when we're thinking about like business events that we host, we've been part of through MEDA, hosting that spring conference, which was committee involved. My first thing I always think about is the attendee experience and like, why are we hosting it? So if someone's like, oh, we want to host this event, it's like, why do we want to host it? Or why do you want to host it? What's the value that you want your attendees to walk away with? And what's the experience you want them to have like pre, during, and post event? Because I think all of those are really important to think about, especially like in today's day and age when like social and everything, like you're just constantly stimulated. Like why should someone come to this event that you're having? So the main thing I think about right out of the gate is the attendee experience. And I've really like throughout the process of planning, I'm thinking about the attendee and what's their experience like to register, to get updates, to stay engaged. What are they thinking when they arrive? And then how do you thank them for coming at the end?
I love that. What would you say is your biggest pet peeve when you go to register for an event?
I think when it's confusing and it's not clear, especially if you have an event that has, it's over a couple days or a couple weeks and there's multiple things going on. I think make it simple for people. Like give them what it is, what it costs. Like, here's how you register for day 1 or day 2, or if it's a monthly thing, like here's how you do that. And if it's not clear, like it's just confusing out of the gate. And I think if you're not clear and it's not simple for people right away, it's like, why, they might then not register because it's like they're taking all of their time to do that and then they don't register.
I would agree. That is also one of my biggest pet peeves is when it's like too clunky. Also when it takes a while to find how much it's going to cost.
Yes.
That's always one of my things. That
Right. Just put it up front, be honest again for that easy experience. I think something too, since we're on like things and then we can get into like things that we do more as best practices, but something else too, again, with attendee experience, like when you have the event, timeliness is so, so important to me, like so important. And I think I've been to things, we've all been to those things where they run over or like the facilitator is acting more of like sharing just all of their things and not facilitating. And I think that there's a lot of little details that make the event really great that can go really badly if you're not paying attention.
Well, the reason why I asked is because sometimes I recently just had this where I was looking at a registration for an event and it took me forever to find how much it cost.
Yeah, and you're like, unless you have to go.
Yeah, and at that point I was like, I don't know if it's actually worth it for me. So that's why I brought that one up. Okay, but so now here you are, you've figured out, what experience do you want the attendee to have? How are they going to register, and what are the objectives that you're going to do for that day? So what do you do next? Yeah, what do you do next?
So we have our annual meeting every year. So I'll use that as an example through this, just as an example, every year in October. And so like at the end of it, we kind of start thinking really about it in November, December, January. But I think that defining a timeline is huge. So no matter what your event is, so you have the idea what you want for your attendees, your guests, and then really getting a timeline set. And then I like to get it set and then work backwards from it. So, okay, you're going to have your event in October. So let's say like the first week of October. What do you need to do now to get there? And so I think some of those really big things, it's even like when you're planning a wedding too. So having done that, I hope to only ever do that once.
Me too.
There's things that I think that you have to get done right away. And they're fun things, but you have to get your venue secured. If you're going to have a photographer at the event, like getting on their radar. We, for all of our really big events, use an AV company here locally in Billings called DIA, DIA Events. They're impeccable, amazing.
Great team.
Amazing. I can't speak highly enough about them because every time I work with them, I know that our AV, our tech, that's another thing. People are always like, trying to pull up slides or something and it's not working. With DIA, I've never had that happen. Like they make sure they're connected, hardwired in for internet if you need it. You have music, you have microphones and all these things that work like they're supposed to, right? Because you have this team. So I think getting your timeline in order and just getting some of those things secured. I think as you have the timeline, something else I like to really start to do is build out a vision board.
I love your vision boards.
Thank you. Yeah. So they're fun, but I think they really help capture like the essence of the theme, incorporating like your venue too. So I think you kind of pick the venue and your theme, like what's going to align well and be a great venue for you based on your needs. I think in Billings, depending on your venue or your event, you have to go with a few certain venues based on your size just because of availability of the types of venues we have here and their capacities. But a vision board, so I think that helps develop a theme. I do it in collaboration usually with Steve for the annual meeting and some of the team. But I really build that out to encompass the essence of how I see the event coming together, the decor, the little details. So it's like, at our grand opening, for example, I had that. So we had been renovating this building for over a year, right? Like that timeline, I think. Like it was a while just because it was a huge renovation project. And I was like, I want confetti in front of the doors. So I had that in my mind for over like 2 years of I just see us all cutting the ribbon together, all together in front of the building, blasting off these handheld confetti guns and watching it rain back down. And that photo to me is like so encompassing of so many things, but incorporated in the vision board. I like had confetti there. I had, cigars on that one because that was like a historic nod.
Cigars and then the
carnations. The confetti, just different like timeline things and things that I just want to make sure that are encompassed within the event. And I think that your vision board can really help you, especially as you get into the weeds of things, draw you back to why are you doing it, because you can have all those details on the vision board of like your theme, the color, all of those little details there that remind you, okay, this is the direction we're going, so you don't go off on like a rabbit trail.
And when I say these vision boards are amazing, they are amazing. And whenever I have always thought about vision board, I've just thought about, you create a vision board for what you want your year to be like. But you really, every time you do a big event, you have a vision board. And even with me, doing our photo shoot for the podcast, there was a vision board. Even helping me plan our True Space event, you made a vision board. And it really does help keep you in line with what you're originally envisioned that event going to be. And so I would say that's probably one of the most useful things.
Thanks. Yeah.
Is because it really, you sit down, you brainstorm, you put it all together, and then you've got it all outlined. It's like a roadmap for how your event's going to be. And then you can start filling in those little details.
Absolutely. I love that. I think that I do it in Canva. And just like on an 8x11, because if I want to print it, I can, but I can pull it up on my phone. I can pull it up on my desktop. So like really when we're working through things, like I just can, it's accessible to me. It's not like just in my office. It's digital. So it's like it's easy to get.
You can share it.
I can share it with people if needed.
Can you just describe what Canva is quickly for our listeners, especially for those that potentially don't know what it is and how it could change their marketing world?
One, I think definitely check it out, the How I Built This podcast, when they interview Canva. So the founder, I'm pretty sure she was on it, and since has maybe sold, I'm not sure, but it was like a startup for people. She originally founded it and created it because she wanted to build a platform that makes it easier for businesses, small businesses, entrepreneurs to create their own things without like needing a graphic designer and understanding how to use Photoshop. So Canva has everything, like PowerPoint templates, social media templates, like marketing, like if you're putting together a marketing plan, there's like a template for that. Like there's so many templates, and then you can just create your own. So we use that a ton for Big Sky Economic Development, and we do the pro, but there's a free version too. And I think it's such a great marketing tool for anyone because you can create it yourself.
Yeah. And it literally makes you have very professional looking flyers and marketing materials, even if you don't have the budget for it. So this is a small business tip here is get on Canva, learn more about it. If you're having troubles with scheduling posts, if you pay for Pro, you can get their content planner and you can create content and then post it on a schedule to your social media, which is extremely helpful. And
they have a new AI feature. I haven't tried that, but I just think it's a really great tool. So definitely, check it out. You can incorporate video too in it. So like with Reels, you can utilize it in some really cool ways.
Okay, so now that we've talked about Canva, just because we mentioned it and I wanted to make sure that is a small business tip that people maybe aren't aware of, but how it can change their life. So now you have your vision board and you've kind of are working through all of your day of event details. What are some of the things that you continue to do to provide that customer or the attendee experience?
Yeah. So within the vision board, a couple of things, and then I'll get to the, just so I don't miss it. I think getting your vendors lined up quickly is really key. Venues fill up really quickly years in advance. So if you know your date, if you have food, photographer, if you're bringing in external people, like maybe a Better Together to help with some decor, stage items, floral, collateral, like if you're having things that are printed, those are huge things. So then you create the vision, you get your team on board, and I think having a good relationship with those vendors is huge. For example, our annual meeting grand opening in 2022, we get our annual reports the week of, like on a Monday. I check them out on Tuesday. I was like, oh, they're here. Great. Well, it's a good thing I opened them and really looked through them because I was missing 2 pages, like a 2-page spread out of it. And I called our vendor, our contact, and I was like, hey, like I need these by Thursday. And they got it turned around so quickly. And I think it's because we have a good relationship, good rapport with them and work with them on a continued basis. So I think that's really huge. after some of those things are done, keeping that attendee experience in mind, I think of then I get the vision board made, and then I start really thinking about, well, one, the content is huge, the accompanied collateral pieces, whatever those are for your theme. So this past year for our annual meeting, we sort of did like a media news-ish theme with disco.
Buzz.
Yeah. So we created a thing called the B Said Buzz. So that included all of our fun, this podcast, YouTube, just some of our fun social channels and platforms that we're on to get connected. So it was like a big page newspaper kind of thing that you could fold in half. Super cute, kind of vintagey feeling. We had a Wordle on it. So you could find some fun Billings words. So that was really fun to create with our marketing agency. And then thinking about that, like with the PowerPoint loop that as people are coming in. So when people come into a space, like what do you want them to feel? What do you want them to see? What do you want them to interact with? And we'll get to how you get them to get there. But I think as I was thinking about what does this space, like what do we want them to look at, see, interact with? So having like a cute table setting, I never get too crazy with those because I think people kind of forget about like what's at the center of the table at the wedding kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But having something nice.
Unless they get to take the centerpiece home,
exactly. Right? And they could not in this case. But, stunning flowers from Ganans. And then we had some fun things on the table. Something else we had that was really fun, kind of back to that news or media piece, was a specialized interactive photo booth kind of thing is what I'll call it. But it's like if you've seen like the Vogue magazine or something, it's huge. Like it's huge. It looks like a magazine cover that you get to be on because you walk inside of this structure. It's lit. It has like our branding on the top. And if you follow us on the Vault on Instagram, we'll show you some stuff.
I was just gonna say that, and we'll have pictures of the B Said Buzz
because I think it's super worth seeing.
We'll have a picture, of the photo booth, which was awesome. And the greatest thing about it is it was a rentable unit, and so other people were getting the idea for their events as well.
Yeah, and I loved it because it's getting people to get up out of their seats. They're not just coming for lunch. There's a fun interactive component. They're posting it on social media so other people are seeing that they're at our event or that they attended our event. It's branded, it's fun, it's interactive for them.
I think ours had a QR code too.
It did, to our website. So I think there's different ways you can engage with the audience in different ways that are a ton of fun. The screen, so as people were walking in, of course you have fun music playing, and it's like all these little details I think that add up to make a really fun experience for attendees. And then instead of like a social media feed, we had slides about our year. And that wasn't just our Big Sky year. It was the community's year. Like what were some big wins that our community and our industries and our businesses had? And we just had that on a continual loop so that people could see that as they're, getting in line for the photo booth or for lunch, chatting with people. So there's different components that bring it all together at the end of the day. And keeping them in mind of like, what do you want them to experience? And I think like that photo booth thing for us this year was a ton of fun. It wasn't just a backdrop. It was like a full interactive, like people loved it.
And I got to man the photo booth.
Oh yeah, you did great because we had the Polaroid.
Yes, and so we also had a Polaroid camera, so we were able to actually like give people their Polaroid pictures, which I have to tell you is people love them. And
they're so cute.
They just always say, shake it like a Polaroid picture, right?
And it's like you don't actually shake the new ones.
But don't shake the new ones. But they just have a great time. And I would say that is one of the greatest things about each of the events is that we have those interactive pieces. One thing I would also say is not every table looks the same. So you're always very mindful with like, there's different colors of table runners. And maybe this year we had the disco balls. And so there was all different sizes of disco balls on the table with the beautiful flower centerpieces. And so you really think every single detail like that through. And that's why the events are so successful.
And we did use some jumbo disco balls from Dia, which was so much fun. They're called mirror balls or disco balls, whatever you want to call them. And then we had this like string color light. It's not like string lights Christmas. It's like a long strip, like really long strip that then changes colors So we use these huge disco balls by the photo booth and then in front of the stage and then put these big like string lights or this like strip lighting that's colorful and changing colors, like kind of sloppy on the disco balls, but it looked like so cute. So pulling those themes together. So again, just like always keeping the attendee experience in mind. Like you don't want them to just come for another lunch, sit down, and then leave. Something else going into the next thing of, okay, so you have the idea of like how you want it to come together, but how do you have the vision board, you have your vendors, you have your day of vision, but how do you now get your attendees there?
Yeah.
And market the content of the event? And I think communication is so huge with your vendors, with your guest speakers. Calendar invites are huge, I think, for those people that are involved as vendors and just keeping in communication with them. But for your attendees, it's communicating with them on different platforms, social media, in person. And then, once they do register, how are you communicating with them? And I think communicate often and thoughtfully. So, when it's getting closer, it's like you're sharing the excitement through a newsletter with your attendee list. And then as it's getting close to, you're like, we can't wait to see you next week.
Some
and then
good reminders.
Can't wait to see you tomorrow. And something that was really important to us this past year, we always have a pretty full agenda at our annual meeting. And so arriving early was I put that in a lot of our communications. I'm like, we can't wait to see you. Please arrive early so that you can network with your community peers. And people did. They made like a funny comment, like, we got your emails, we arrived early. But I think that's like a fun thing too, of like, okay, they are seeing what we're doing. And they did respond in a way of like, they do want to come and network early with their people and get seated and find their chairs and show up early. And then, communicating with them like day of. Even I think of the META Spring Conference that was over multiple days. At the end of each conference day, I would go home and put together a newsletter of like, here's what we heard today. Here's what we learned. We can't wait to see you tomorrow. Send it that night. And then the next morning, it's like, hey, we can't wait to see you. Just a reminder, breakfast starts at X, So I think those little reminders. And then if you can coordinate some of them on social media, like scheduled way in advance of like, we can't wait to see you soon, happening now. And some of those you can just schedule.
Yeah.
The newsletters, if you are sharing some of those content things, you have to, maybe in like day of, someone has to do that. And then, I think a huge thing day after, again, with that communication, is just saying thank you for attending. If there's some great recaps and things that were mentioned at the event, if it's like a one-day luncheon, like our annual meeting is, of listing those out, linking things that were mentioned. And then with the photos, it's like you get the gallery a couple weeks after or a month after your event. Then you get to reshare those throughout the year and highlight the event again, or like big takeaways from the event that people said,
kind
or
of be reminders.
Of like the keynotes or the guest speakers, the panel, things like that. So I think that communicating pre, during, and post is so important with your attendees, especially.
What would you say to people who they're planning events, but they're not getting the responses that they anticipated? What kind of tips would you say when you're marketing an event? This is how you should find your target market.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think sometimes we haven't done that well. There's been learning curves of like, oh, I wish we would have had more people. But it's like putting all that thoughtful communication and planning in advance and then sharing it. I think people, when they're like, oh, we shared it, you can't just share it once. Like, it's like sharing it with your partners. So we share it with our partners and people that we work closely with, our board, like the chamber, DBA, other people like that are in our world of work, so that they're sharing it with their communities. But maybe if you're a small business, like, are you sharing it with your other small businesses in your area, or people, that you interact with, your vendors, your people, so that you're being thoughtful and giving those invitations. We also send out a lot of personal emails from our team of people that we have like close relationships with, asking and inviting them to come, because we do want them there, right? So I think it's finding those different ways. You can post, like, social's important, newsletters, but how are you getting that one-on-one too? It takes a little time, but if the event's really important, I think those things go a long way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Think about who you want in the room and then make sure that you're hand inviting, well, not hand delivering an invite, but like, even if you are hand delivering an invite.
That's so fun too.
Or if you are sending them a personal email, it makes a huge difference because it's not just another email that they're receiving. This is an email from somebody they have a relationship with. And so I think that makes a huge difference in getting the right people in the room.
And we did actually speaking of that, we did a small run of printed hand-delivered invites for our opening,
documentary
premiere that was in partnership with our annual meeting. We closed a chunk of the downtown street off right in front of the Babcock. We had, a clear tent. That was another one of just being thoughtful of like, okay, if it rains a little, you have food trucks, you have like all these other vendors you're coordinating plus a street closure. And DBA was so helpful in that because I had never done one.
And that's the Downtown Billings Lions.
Yeah. And in front of the Babcock, but just, again, having those different things that you would maybe see or think you're getting at a documentary or like a film premiere.
Yeah.
And trying to incorporate those in
red carpet
in our way.
And
yeah. So I think those are fun things to think about too.
I love that. So all the little details matter, and that's what's so important. So what kind of tips do you have the day before the event? So now you've got the people registered, you know how many are coming to the event. Sometimes there's surprises day of, but that happens, so you know to buffer for that. But what is the prep that you do the day before an event?
Yeah. So a couple of things, like I mentioned earlier with the timeline, like kind of setting those things out of like thinking of your vendors, if you have stuff you need printed, making sure you at least have that a week honestly, it's nice to have it too, but realistically, sometimes it's at least a week in advance in hand printed. The day before or like the week of, I'm putting all of our things together that need to go to said venue. So annual reports, certain decor things that need to go, and I load them all up. We now have this really fun wagon where we are downtown, so a lot of our venues we work out of our downtown, so we can wagon it there.
So we wagon it there.
Or wagon it in the car, banners, pull-up banners, things like that. It's really revising and looking at the attendee list again. So if you have a check-in process that you have the most updated, or if you're doing a conference and you're doing like name badges, you're kind of printing those up until your registration closes, and then you still have some extras because you just never know if someone's sick and they send someone else, so that you have those things. But really getting all of that together and then setting up, utilizing your team as much as you can. Our team is great and they come and help set up, but whatever that looks like for your event, and then doing like AV run-throughs.
Yeah.
And making sure that all of your tech, your audio, all of that is working and the setup's where it needs to be, so that when you leave that night, you know that you're good to go for the next day.
So you said doing AV run-throughs, and so I want to clarify this.
Yes.
That means you are asking people for their slideshows before the event.
Yes.
So then you can do one seamless slideshow.
And so audio visual run-throughs, I think if you are pulling content from other people, getting that like 2 weeks in advance at least, so that you can give, if you're using another company like a Dia Events, you can share, and on Google Drive or Dropbox, you can share all of those digital assets that need to be done way in advance. I try to get that to them a week or two ahead of time. And I also build them out like an Excel document of the agenda, like the time, who's speaking, what kind of mic they need, what's the slide that goes with it, is there video? Like I build out this whole Excel document so that when they're sitting and we're walking through it, or if they're building that out, they know exactly what order all of those digital assets go in, and when they go, like what part of the agenda, what kind of mics are needed, if it's a headset, handheld, podium mic, and transition things of the stage too. So do you have chairs for a panel, and then do those come off? Like all of those details, and communicating it as much as in advance as possible in a very detailed fashion. I just think it makes things go smooth.
I love that. And that's why I brought it up. That is a huge tip. And that's why we don't have the tech issues, is because we're prepared in advance. Okay, so now we've got all the things in the space, and you've got a lot of things set up, and you are doing your run-throughs day of. What does that look like?
Day of, usually, I like to get there, and I learned this from Jessica Hart when we were at the chamber, she taught me a lot of great event things. And one of those things was, and she just did it, but I learned from her in the way of like, I like to get there before the rest of the team gets there. So I can just go look at every table, make sure it's set up. I can just walk through, move any last little things I need to, and just have a minute to breathe and just sit for a second.
To calm before the storm.
Observe. I usually get a coffee on the way because honestly, I don't really eat until the day's over just because I'm like not ready. Usually it's like when I have to speak, I'm like, I think then scheduling time, like having agenda things too for your team or whoever's helping. So all of your vendors should have set up most of their stuff the day before. We always do a team huddle that first day of like, can people be helped? We go over that in the staff meeting that week of, like that Monday if the event's Thursday. We talk about it at staff meeting, but then I think we do like a team huddle and the team just kind of knows at this point, like where to go, what to do, which is super helpful and just like how we host. So having your team on the same page and willing to help is so, so critical and important. And then I think people start showing up. You help them get to their table. You welcome them. You thank them for being here. And then it starts rolling. And the event is in swing and hopefully nothing goes wrong. And but some things do happen and I think people get it and there's grace given. And then after it's over, our team helps tear down, get everything cleaned up. It always
tears down so much faster than it takes to put up.
And we try to help too, I think, and we don't have, but like even putting like, if we're at the Northern, their team's amazing. But like if our team can help just put glasses in one table, linens on one, and just to help their team out too. Like I know they don't need it, but it's just like a courtesy thing because we're so appreciative of being in their space and having them help us with every little thing of how can we be the most helpful.
I love that. All right.
And one other thing too, guest speakers, if you have panels and stuff, I'm huge on gifts or little tokens of appreciation. So
I love that. Everyone likes getting a little something, something.
Exactly.
I got caramel cookie waffles the other day for speaking on a panel.
So much.
Okay. So the day's completed. And what do you do the day after? You kind of touched base on it a little bit earlier in this episode, but just kind of recap that for us.
Yeah. And I think the communication thing I talked a lot about, so I don't need to rehash that, but it's like that thank you for attending out to the attendees. It's a thanks on social media, maybe a cute post from the day of. You probably have someone posting to social media during the event, which is great. Thank the team, I think is really big, just being grateful for everyone's help and your vendors, like sending them a quick note. And then I put everything away at the office. I don't let it sit. Maybe some people do, I don't know, but I like put everything away so like I'm ready to go and it's just like done. We'll usually do a team debrief also, just on what went well, what can we do different next year, those types of things so that we can get the cycle going again.
I always love that. And yes, I agree with putting it away because I've usually put it all away like the day of the event. But just recently I had just like the craziest schedule and
you've been crazy.
Just kind of put it in the office and then I would just stare at it and I was like, oh my God, I have to put that away. And when am I going to get down to the lower level? And it's like 2 floors away, but like so I just say, rip the Band-Aid off, get it done, and then you can go home and put your sweatpants on.
And one fun thing, like our marketing closet, like we record in a historic vault, our marketing closet is also in a vault. So it's kind of fun.
I think we have like 6 vaults in the building.
Insane.
So
but those are some of my tips and things that I think about when planning an event.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing how to plan an event. You can find Marce B at MarceB_406 on Instagram, and she'll share some visuals of what we talked about today. And then also just make sure that you're following her because she posts a lot of great information all the time on there that could be beneficial to you as a event planner, as a style fashionista.
Yeah, thanks. You're too sweet. Yeah.
And just general great tips for being in leadership roles. So thanks for joining us today on The Vault.
Bye. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Make sure you are subscribed to The Vault at 201 North Broadway, wherever you podcast, including YouTube.
Connect with us on Facebook at The Vault at 201 North Broadway and Instagram at TheVault_201.
Don't forget to visit us at thevault@201.com and subscribe to our newsletter.
We will see you next time.
Bye. Thank you to the Small Business Development Center for sponsoring The Vault at 201 North Broadway. The Small Business Development Center offers free personalized support from business plans to financial projections and beyond, empowering small businesses to thrive. Reach out to us at bigsky economic development.org.